Hello and welcome to the second episode of the United Front Football Podcast with me, Mr. Breezy. Thank you for coming back. If you enjoyed the first episode and you've come back, then we're doing something right at least.
Yeah, we survived the pilot. So
yeah. The first one that did go on a little bit longer than expected, I must admit. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, cheers for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribing, giving a thumbs up, leaving a comment down below. You know what engagement's like on this place. And if you're watching anywhere else on Spotify or any of the other podcast areas, leave a review as high as you can. Or as low as you want. Not too
any
low,
review
though, right?
helps. Yeah, but 5 stars are preferable. But be honest with yourselves. Don't blow smoke up our ass for no reason. So.
Yeah. Constructive criticism is always welcomed.
Always.
Yeah. Well, we'll jump into it. So obviously I've literally just watched the United v Wolves West Ham game. My blood pressure is still incredibly high.
I'm not even a United fan, and I was stressed.
Yeah. That's not just from my diet either. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But over the weekend, we did ask you guys to give us your hot football takes, your takeaways, your kind of comments on the weekend. So we'll start going through some of those. If you want to get involved on this going forward, make sure you're going following us on Twitter. It's the United Frontcast. On every social media front. Get involved on there, chuck us your opinions, and we'll give you some airtime, whether good or bad. So do you want to jump in with the first hot take from the listening public?
Of course, and first up, we've got one coming in from How We Roll Owen. If you're in the FM streaming scene, you'll know of Owen. He does. I've seen him before come on with some hot takes in the past, but this one's actually quite sensible, I think, given the opening, or literally the first game of the season, which was of course Burnley v Man City. Yeah, he's come in saying Burnley have the ability to push for a top half finish and beyond this season.
That is a bold take. Whilst I like the way that Burnley were playing, and I don't think Man City were fully on their game, I can definitely see them causing issues for some people, but I do still feel like they've got quite a championship squad in the Premier League. I don't think you can really take anything away from playing Man City first game of the season, though, and it's going to take 5 or 10 games to really get an idea of what they can do. But yeah, not the hottest take. I think I've got them finishing comfortably outside the relegation zone. I don't think quite top 10. But I could be proven wrong.
I've got them like mid-table, like 12th, 11th. Like they could push up to 10th. It's going to be, if they do finish that high, it's a real testament to how good of a coach company is. With again, the squad's good. But I think, like you said, it's just on the cusp of it's sort of how we were with when Brentford first came up, right? Yeah. So you look at it on paper and it's it feels like a championship side, but Frank's been able to get the most out of them. And if company can do that, maybe.
If they can replicate what Brentford have done, then they'll be laughing. I'll take the next one. Vlam15. He's got a take on Liverpool, so he is a Liverpool fan as well. So bear this in mind when I'm saying this. One tactical move from Liverpool. One tactical move made Liverpool suffer for 70 minutes. Klopp was either too stubborn or too inept to deal with it. Now, I've said this about Klopp in the past, and it's regarding kind of where he more determinedly plays the same players in the same positions without really tweaking stuff. Obviously, fantastic coach. His achievements speak for themselves. He turned Liverpool from, the odd top 4 challenge into being one of the best teams in Europe for the best part of 5 years. But I do wonder whether he has that Wenger tendency to be so stuck in his own mind that he can only think of one way he wants people to play, and when it isn't working, when everything shows that it's not quite working, he just won't try and change it. And it cost him last year. I think it's cost him in the past. I think it's cost him in big games when he's determined to play a certain way or plays in certain positions that aren't performing or the tactic isn't working, and it costs them. What do you think on that? Do you think he has got that kind of stubbornness that can cost his team?
He has, in a way, but in a way I almost also think it's justified given how successful he's been with it in the past. Not necessarily this current style of play, or maybe the style of play from the last couple of years, but obviously when he first came in, what he was doing with the whole, gegenpress thing and the heavy metal football was so successful. And I think last season, he probably did go on quite too long before he did make a change. And when he did, seeing what he did with Trent's position and moving him more into an inverted wing back role, it actually made Liverpool better, and they finished really strong last year. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt based off this weekend, though, just because, I'm sure we'll talk about later, they are missing well, they're missing anyone who can play in quite a key position in that game. And I actually do think if they had a competent, not that McAllister was awful, but if they had like a proper out and out number 6 in the team, it may have made a difference. No, absolutely not. And I think if they had those options available, even like someone like Bajcetic to bring off the bench, just to sort of tighten things up a little bit, it may have made a bit of a difference. But like I said, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt based on that game. But it all does largely depend on what they do now for the rest of the transfer window, I think.
Yep. I've got a couple of I'm going to kind of roll into one to throw at you. So a couple of Newcastle takes. Jord 713 has put forward, do Newcastle have what it takes to finish above Arsenal this season? And who'll be the 6th Liverpool sign if they miss out on the Caicedo and Lavia? I think we're going to touch on that in a little bit. But also from Andrew KM, I'm sure he's a regular in most FM chats. He's certainly a regular in my Discord.
Statman extraordinaire is Andrew.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's not that Andrew. I don't think it's a different.
Oh, is it
one.
not? Oh, my bad.
It's a different Andrew. But he said Newcastle were very good tonight, an outstanding debut. Anthony Gordon starting to justify why Howe really wanted him in January. And he looks to have gained so much confidence from pre-season. Obviously, had the great under-21s win, where I think he was in the team of the season. Might have even got a golden boot or golden ball. And he looks like he's a lot more effective. Now, I'm someone who has bagged on Anthony Gordon in the past, and I think I might have even done it in the last podcast. But he was really good in this game. And Newcastle absolutely blew me away with how good they were. I know we both kind of went over how good Villa were, or how good Villa could be prospectively this year, and they kind of blew them out of the water a little bit. I think they could have, like Newcastle could have scored more. Villa looked a bit shell-shocked. But that's a big claim to say that Newcastle could maybe challenge Arsenal. What do we think on that?
I'll quickly touch on Anthony Gordon. I mean, fair play to him. It's taken him about 2.5 years to finally have a game where he's impressed me. So well done, Anthony. I'm the same. I've never been that sold on him. I've never really seen the hype. My thing with him when he was at Everton, when everyone was raving about him and all the interest from Chelsea, my point was always, I think he's just sort of standing out because in a really crap Everton team, he's the only one who's willing to put any effort in. And as a result, people look at him going, wow, look how great he is. And I think he's actually just quite a limited winger. But I will, again, I can say, same as you, I thought it's generally one of the best games I've seen him play in the Premier League so far at the weekend. I thought he was really good. It's just whether or not he can kick on with that. In terms of finishing above Arsenal, though, I still, like, look, they were excellent. And I actually had Villa beaten Newcastle this weekend, but not because I thought Newcastle were bad or anything. Maybe because I've overhyped Villa a little bit, but I think a bit of recency bias because I think when Villa played Newcastle last year, they blew them out of the water, and it was sort of quite unexpected. So, as good as I do think Newcastle is still going to have a good season, but I don't think if you go position by position, player by player, just not even close to that Arsenal team. And we might touch on Arsenal a bit later, but like Arsenal are like a good 3-4 years ahead of Newcastle right now in terms of their overall development as a squad and as a team. So like, I think it is a bit too early to be making that type of prediction.
It is a bold claim this after one game. And I do agree with you. Like, I think the thing that you could say with Arsenal is, like we said last time, is they have Champions League this year. They've got a lot of games to play. So do Newcastle. And Newcastle have got a thinner squad. Still like a very good squad. And I think there's still a lot of players in there that, would get in the Arsenal team, and obviously vice versa. But it's going to be a real toss-up. I think both of these teams are going to be really interesting to see this year, how they deal with obviously they're not playing more games, or not in Arsenal's case anyway, but playing higher quality games more. There's going to be like 50 games plus for each team, all at a really high level. Can they handle it? Especially with like the intensity that Newcastle play at. They give me that kind of Klopp first few years vibes where it's like, okay, when's the drop off? There is going to be a drop off. When's it going to happen?
Yeah, you're just waiting for it. And on Villa, like, well, I think we will talk about Villa in a little bit more depth later on. But I will highlight we've got a question. We've got two conflicting takes coming in. One from Mr. Cookie, who says Villa will miss out on Europe this season due to their defence, whereas Keeney feels that Villa will end up in the top 6 still, despite the opening day hammering. Again, we'll touch on Villa later on, but we'll bear that in mind when discussing them. One of the other sort of big teams that played, I say big teams, one of the teams that I think had a lot of interest for their first game of the season this weekend was Spurs. Obviously, new manager, post Harry Kane. He's now gone. We've got Andrew Terry, who was the Andrew I was thinking of earlier when I said about the stat comment. So too many Andrews. Basically, he comes in saying James Maddison will determine whether or not Spurs finish challenging or finish in a European spot or whether they finish mid-table or not. So basically, Andrew's saying James Maddison will either be the guy for Spurs this season or just another squad player. What do you reckon on that?
I don't think that's much of a hot take, to be honest. I think Maddison has consistently shown over the last few years how good he is, like how creative he can be, how effective he can be, not only from open play but dead ball situations as well. And there is a massive gap for a creator in that Spurs side, especially now Harry Kane's gone. He's been given the number 10 shirt, well, that way heavy on his back, but I think he is the creator in that Spurs squad. And I was saying with Newcastle last year, like they've just got to concentrate in the league. Obviously getting a good cup run would be great. It's going to be really telling whether they decide to stick or twist with Richarlison up front. I think whether they go and drop some of that Harry Kane cash on a new striker or look to strengthen elsewhere through the squad, because there is a lot of holes in that team still.
Yeah.
But I think with the sheer volume of chances that Maddison will create with players like Son, who's great at finding gaps and getting in behind, he's killer with that. And I don't know if you watched the game, but Maddison was running it in the final third for Spurs. He was creating tons of chances, be it from set pieces or open play. So I don't think that's a hot take, particularly. I think it's a pretty correct take.
Yeah, no, I'd go with that. One that I think we'll finish on. I believe there is one that I'll skim past, but again, just because we're going to cover it later. Dan Cunningham asking us how good Chelsea looked yesterday after the first 15-20 minutes and how sort of settled they look. Chelsea is on our sort of list of things to discuss this week, so we'll definitely get onto Chelsea because I think it's one of the more interesting aspects this weekend. I'm going to finish on what I think is actually the biggest hot take of the list so far. It comes in from HC16, and he's a Chelsea fan, so just be wary of any potential bias. I'll read it verbatim. Arsenal were average. Not much creativity. Other than the 2 goals, I thought they didn't do much at all. Obviously referring to their 2-1 win over Nottingham Forest.
I think it's a tough game to be fair, any first game of the season is tough.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, it's tough to judge Burnley on how they did against Man City first game of the season. I was expecting a lot more from Arsenal against Forest. I'm not going to lie. I think Forest was solid last year. I don't think they've done like much really impressive business, but they are a solid team with a few players who can make a difference. I think Arsenal were good and they did create chances, and they should have had more goals in the first half, first 60 minutes. The fragility with Arsenal though does show a little bit. Like once they got that goal back, they looked a bit rattled and they were on the back foot for the last 10-15 minutes. And I think if they played for another 15 minutes, I think that might have ended in a draw, that game, because they looked really on the back foot and a bit shell-shocked, to be honest. Maybe it was the fact that they should have been 3 or 4 up. And it's like, before you know it, you know, this team are back in the game and they've got their tails up. So
yeah,
I don't necessarily think they were bang average. We'll see over the course of the season how well they do. But they were missing some key players. They had to reshuffle the back line. They're obviously missing Gabriel Jesus up front, and they've got new players settling in. So I think they'll be good. I thought Declan Rice had a really good game. He looked like he was being that dynamic box-to-box kind of player that I assumed he was going to be, rather than the proper just sitting destroyer. And
I think the word I would use for Arsenal, rather than average, I think is half cooked, and not in a way in the sense of like they still need a few players or anything like that. I think it's like you said, they've got an entirely different midfield this season, and I think you got obviously Declan Rice is a brilliant addition. I don't need to go into it. People know I'm a West Ham fan will know how highly I rate Declan Rice, but you've also, I think the more interesting one in that is Kai Havertz, who's someone who's not. I don't think since he's been at Chelsea, I don't think he ever played centre mid. Maybe like the odd game here and there. He was mostly used as a forward or a false 9 or a winger at Chelsea. So I think there's a bit of a adaptation period for Havertz to learn that role. But like you said, I still thought they were really good. And I think if anything, it's more of a credit to Forest. They defended a lot better than I thought they were capable of doing. If I'm being completely honest, I thought they dug in really well, really kept their shape brilliantly. And ultimately, it took a couple of moments of magic from Martinelli and then from Saka for the second goal to unlock it.
A Saka goal or something.
It was unbelievable. Like he's
mustard.
He really is. He's fantastic. So, like I think it is harsh to call them average, and I think this is one of them. I think it's just good to get the first win under the belts of the season, and then it's just going to be a case of can they kick on from here and get better and better with each game.
Yep. I mean, speaking of getting the first win under the belt and hopefully kicking on, I'll take this this opportunity to talk a bit about the game I've just watched, the Man United game. Obviously, a Man United fan. Not what I expected from United. It looked sloppy, ponderous. Not really like the high energy that I expected. I was way off my prediction with Wolves. I expected Wolves to look a bit disjointed and shell. They were just everywhere tonight. Whether they can play like that every week, whether they can play like that and actually finish some chances, I think that was their big problem last year. Was the same thing though. Like I remember watching a load of Wolves games and going, they play some great football, but they just can't put the ball in the back of the net. Like, and I think it looks like they've got the same issue this year. I don't know whether they're rocked from last year. It's a lot of the same players from last year. There's a few players obviously back from loan, but they're not done a whole lot of business. But I think I'll speak for every United fan and say that we were lucky tonight. We could have got a couple of goals, but they could have had 4 or 5 if they could hit the target or Onana wasn't in the way. Bit of a shocking performance from ourselves. And like I say, like you just said, get those 3 points under your belt, get that rocky start away. Let's not forget that we had a great season last year after losing the first 3 games, or the first 2 games, like getting shown up in the first couple of games. We grew into it. There's new players there. All I can do is hope that we're going to step on from this game. But they'll have obviously had like a lot to play for, a lot to prove with the manager leaving. Everyone, including us, almost kind of like condemning them to relegation already.
Absolutely.
If they can play like that all season, they will be fine, I'm sure. Like maybe not like top 10 fine, but like I'm sure they'll be, they'll be away from the relegation zone. But like I say, can they keep it up?
There's still, and this is going to sound so harsh because I thought they were. I'll be honest. I missed the first like 40 minutes of the first half. So all the second half. Caught the end of the first half. They were brilliant tonight. I thought they were absolutely fantastic. Worked their socks off. Deserved the win. I think if you're being honest as well, you probably agree with that. I think they overall they
didn't deserve to lose.
Chances.
I'll give you that.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Didn't deserve to. I felt they did enough to win the game. Like you say, it's just putting the chances away. I still have big question marks. Because it's one of them where I look at it and I think it's one thing to turn up away at Old Trafford, opening game of the season, and put in a performance like that. You've then got to, but you kind of also have to sort of replicate that throughout the season against the less bigger sides, basically. I think playing United, I know Wolves have been an established Premier League team for a while now. I don't mean to make them sound like they're a newly promoted team like Luton or whatever, but like most teams get up for the United game at Old Trafford, right? Or when the big boys, when they play the big boys.
Final, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's thing for a lot of clubs. Like you want to be part of a team that has a bit of an upset, and I spoke about this last week with Gary O'Neill and what he did so well at Bournemouth last year. Was sort of harnessing that underdog sort of energy, if you like, and like using that to sort of help Bournemouth stay up. And I saw a little bit of that. Well, not even a little bit. I saw a lot of that with Wolves tonight. I just wonder if they're going to be able to keep that for the whole season. One thing I will say is, though, I think as big as the Ruben Neves loss is to them, I follow a few Wolves fans on Twitter, like hello Dave. Like one of the things I've seen from Wolves fans is like, well, the potential of Neves going could unlock Mateus Nunes. Because from the looks of it, he was, a lot of hype when he signed him last year. I don't really think he stood out all that much last season. I thought tonight he was excellent. And Pedro Neto, look back to the player he was before the injury that he got, and Mateus Cunha looked like Yaya Toure reincarnated. Like he's not dead, but like you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
So there's a lot of positives. Biggest worry for me, is like you said, is where the goals are coming from. I've seen them being linked recently with Mikel Antonio. If they need goals. Nah,
that's
not the answer. Trust. Take him, for the love of God, take him. But like, he's not the answer. So it's definitely made me reconsider my prediction of Wolves getting relegated. I'm going to stick with it for now, mainly because I hope. Because if it's not them, it might be us. So I'm just going to stick with it.
You don't want to start pulling too many teams out of that guaranteed relegation spot.
No. I can't have the Premier League season depression period until at least December, I don't think. So
let's get Christmas out of the way, and then it's downhill from there, really.
Exactly. I've got to get your thoughts on this though. For Man United, I thought they were shocking. Personally, I thought it was an awful performance, and there are a couple of players in particular who stood out to me. From what I saw at the end of the first half, Martinez looked a bit shaky. I know he got a yellow card early on, and he ended up getting hooked half time as a result. I thought he looks a bit rash. I thought Anthony was awful. I know that most United fans accept they overpay for Anthony. apart from the odd flashes, I'm not seeing it with him. But the one for me that surprised me, I thought Casemiro was awful tonight. I thought he got absolutely bullied by Lamina and Nunes in that Wolves midfield. I thought he was awful.
He had a few shaky games at the end of last season, and I think when we're in control of a game and we're more at it, he's fine. When he's isolated against people that are running at him, he's not quick. Like he's not a fast player. I don't think he's like glacial. He's not, Matic slow. But he's, if he's got a couple of players running at him, he does struggle. Where he excels is like reading of the game, being in the right place at the right time. It's hard to be in the right place at the right time when the ball's right in front of you, but traveling at 30 miles an hour past you. It's tough to do that. I still think he showed some flashes of like some good passes, like he was controlling the ball well and playing the ball around well, but he just wasn't putting in that kind of experienced defensive midfield performance that you'd expect, really.
Do you think he needs a little bit of help from Mount in that respect? Because it looked like to me that Mount was playing a lot more advanced than I thought he was going to. I thought they were also going to play as like a pairing with Fernandes, but like ahead of the two of them.
Yeah, maybe he was getting a bit ahead of himself. I think it's early days with that midfield three. It could be a case of like there needs to be a bit more communication, a bit more knowing of when to stay, when to go with Bruno on the other side, because I think they're pretty similar players in terms of like the energy and how tactically aware they are. Obviously, like slightly different like end product and attributes, but I think there needs to be one that stays and one that goes. As everyone does in the midfield, right? You can't just kind of vacate the midfield, especially when it seems like Wan-Bissaka's playing a lot higher up the pitch as well than you might expect him to. He's getting up and trying to get kind of underlapping and overlapping runs. There needs to be a little bit more security in there. We can't just be gung-ho all the time, because that was what was undoing us today. They had 3 or 4 really good ball carriers who could not get into a bit of space and get straight at our defence, and that's why Leacher ended up with a yellow card and like had to kind of like rein it back in, because when he's at his best when he's aggressive, and once you got a yellow card, you can't be aggressive anymore.
But I think with that midfield, you can see why United want Amrabat. I think for a game, how the game was going tonight, I think having an Amrabat there next to Casemiro, I think would have made a bit of a difference in terms of coping with that, because he's a machine as well. Yeah. Just runs, but he's just one of them players that loves running around and just getting tackles in.
Yeah,
and I think United need a little bit of that tonight. I think
definitely, and I think if Fred hadn't gone, I think he'd have been the player that had come off the bench and like locked down that midfield, because as many negatives as he has, he's great at being that energy in the midfield and getting like being the legs for someone next to him. And I think if there's an Amrabat or someone similar that comes in to give that support to Casemiro, I think that'll be a big thing. On the Antony thing as well, though, he is the most frustrating player, because he obviously has the ability. He obviously can. You see it in flashes where he's quick. He can pick a pass. He's got a good shot on him. Like he can beat a man. But he just seems to make the wrong decision more often than not. Like he'll take the shot when the pass is on, or he'll try and squeeze through a pass when there's space to run into, or he'll go outside or inside, or hold on to it for too long. I think that the jury is out. He had more bad games than he had good games last year, but he wasn't all bad. I'd give him a solid 6 out of 10 from last year on the whole of it. But he needs to step on. He can't keep performing at that. Like,
do you know what? I made a reference to this on Twitter actually earlier during the game, and there is like I was memeing a little bit, but for me there is an element of truth. There is an element of truth to it, and I've just got to call it how I see it. Everything you've just said about him, myself and many West Ham fans have said the exact same thing about Saïd Benrahma.
Oh yeah,
and like obviously Antony, you can tell, has got more ability than Benrahma, and on his day he's got more, he's got more class and all this sort of stuff, but it's that inconsistency, it's the decision making, it's the getting a little bit predictable at times with the cutting in on his left foot, and once defenders figure that out, relatively easy to defend against. There's no, for me at the moment, honestly, mate, there's not an awful lot separating them.
No,
I think when you think, and Antony's obviously got the bigger, he's playing for the bigger club, much bigger price tag, much bigger reputation, played for a bigger club even before he played for, I want to say not a big club than United, but like he played for a big club prior to United as well, obviously. Yeah. At what point, like, because for West Ham with Benrahma, obviously we can afford to kind of have this inconsistent winger who, it's all right because at some point he'll pull something out the bag and win us a game. I don't feel like United can afford to have that. They need someone who delivers on a lot more regular basis. At what point does it become another Sancho situation where it's almost like we just can't keep picking him?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think he had an okay season last year, 5-6 out of 10. He can't do that forever. I think he does need to step on. He needs to show an improvement in consistency. The one thing he does that, like, the way that, like, Ten Hag likes to press from the front and the pressing triggers, he knows that. And that was one of the big things he did well last year. And I think that'll be one of the big things that he does well still this year. And one of the reasons he keeps getting picked, because he knows what the manager wants to do. But yeah, you've got to have a better output as a forward at Man United. I think one of the big things, though, is Ten Hag has shown that he is a ruthless player. He will drop a ruthless manager. He will drop players. He will take them out. He will give other people a chance. I mean, you just spoke of Sancho there. I think today, like, I think in pre-season and today, he's looked better than he has done since he signed. When he came off the bench today, he was making things happen. He wasn't going past people, but he was finding, like, nice little passes, like give and goes, passes through the lines. Like, he nearly created a couple of chances at the end. He looked way better than he has done in a long time at United. He had the odd flash here and there, but if he can keep up that performance, he could take his position. That's the nice thing. We've got Rashford, who, you know, when we've got either another striker in or Højlund's fit, you know, Rashford will be going out to the left. That opens up wingers for the right. So we have got options. It's not like, oh, we have to keep playing him there. And yeah, like I say, I think Ten Hag has shown that he will drop a player if he's not performing. I agree. He needs to show something else. He needs to show more.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that United could definitely do with a few more incomings. I think between now and the end of the window. I think it makes the Højlund situation a lot more interesting, though, because I love Rashford. I don't think there's something about him where he's just better off the left than he's playing through the middle for me personally. And I think having someone to play off of like a Højlund, I think it could be really, really interesting how that goes as we go further into the season. But I don't think it's quite panic stations yet for United. And hopefully, I'm sure Ten Hag will know that wasn't good enough tonight, and I'm sure he'll be on him. He'll be on him. Like
I said before, with the start of last season, we were dreadful. And it just got better from there. So, like, all I can hope is that the same thing happens. Like, we start not at our best, but at least we've not been beaten 4-0 by Bournemouth. Brentford, sorry. That'd have been even worse.
That would have been horrendous. Yeah. Well, speaking of Bournemouth, and I'm not gonna spend too much time on this because I feel like it's quite an easy. Basically, I could just pull out a tweet from last season when it comes to talking about a West Ham game. To be honest, my team, West Ham, had their opening day game away at Bournemouth. A new look Bournemouth, obviously new manager, loads of new signings. And you have West Ham, same manager, no new signings.
A couple have left though. So
and are probably about to leave. So that's great. I thought, do you know what? It's even more annoying than the fact we didn't win because I thought we were actually quite good for the first hour. I think you were messaging me during the game, so I think you watched a bit of it.
Yeah. I watched the full game. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I thought.
I mean, I was listening to the radio because it was at 3:00, right?
Yes, of course, absolutely. Yeah. When we say listening, I mean, we're imagining it in our minds because you know the blackout. I thought up until I know Bournemouth had more possession, and people are going to use that as a thing to sort of go, oh, they badger. They didn't do anything with that possession. A lot of it was just them knocking around the back line for a few minutes and then going down the wings or knocking it long or whatever. Like, I don't think they caused us that many issues really, apart from the odd David Brooks effort. And Solanke was obviously, you know, giving Aguerd a bit of a difficult time. But on the whole, I thought we created the better chances. I thought our midfield was way better than theirs. Fornals, Paqueta, and even Souček. Like, Souček's back. Who saw that coming? Maybe Rice was the problem the entire time.
He was holding everyone back.
He was holding everyone back. And then we got the goal, and I thought we were good value for it. And then we did the classic David Moyes thing. We went 1-0 up and went, all right, come on then. You attack us. And we're going to defend for the next half an hour. And ultimately, you invite that much pressure on against the team who's got a new manager, first home game of the season, likes to play quite an attacking style. And I was watching them make changes. I was watching them bring Kiefer Moore on, bringing Semenyo on, playing like a 4-2-2 and just going for it. And I'm just sitting there thinking, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but their goal is coming because we were doing nothing apart from bringing Danny Ings on, which, I mean, you might as well sub me on. Like, it was that pointless. I said I'd be quick. Sorry, I'm kind of sorry.
This is your therapy session.
Yeah, and then the goal, obviously, bit of a fortunate deflection. Falls to Solanke, takes the goal well. 2 points dropped, as far as I'm concerned. I'll be interested to hear your take on that from a neutral standpoint. And am I right to be as annoyed as I am?
I'd probably go with that. Yeah, you had the same feeling at the end of the season, at the end of the game that I did today. But Wolves just can't keep the ball in the goal. So yeah. It was like, oh god, like. Although, like you said, I think you would have been good for the win. I don't necessarily think a draw is an unfair result. There were periods where they looked dangerous and create some stuff. So Dom Solanke looks like a real handful. He had a good season last year, and he looks like he's just kind of stepping on now. I think you guys have been linked with him, right?
Do you know what? We have been, and pre-Saturday, I was like, I'm just not sure. Like, I've not really ever been that impressed by him. I watched him on Saturday. I was like, bring him to the bowl. He's the new number 9. He's my boy. Honestly, the way he played on Saturday is like is how David Moyes thinks Mikel Antonio can still play. Do you know what I mean? I was like, right, you are the most David Moyes striker we've come up against in the league, and probably will come up against the league, bar Erling Haaland, that we could actually realistically sign.
Yeah,
I'm sure. Like, we're about to get a massive influx of cash from Lucas Paqueta going, and if it's true that Antonio is off to Saudi this window, I'd be chucking money. This is under the guise as if Moyes is insisting on getting a Premier League proven goal striker or goal scorer. Go for Dom Solanke, because whilst he may not be the most prolific, the way Moyes likes to have his strikers play, he will cause teams. If he plays like that for every week for us, he will cause teams untold amount of problems, and that will create more for the likes of Jared Bowen, for the likes of Ben Rama, or Fornals if he's playing, or whoever else ends up coming in. I think that's been a big part of why we've not been as good in the last sort of 18 months or so. Well, not 18 months, but last year or so. I think it's because Mikel Antonio is a problem now. You know how last year Leicester were bad, and they kept thinking that Jamie Vardy was still the answer, and if anything was a bit of a hindrance. We are now entering that territory with Mikel Antonio and West Ham, and I'm sick of listening to commentators go, well, he's quick and he'll bully defenders. He's not quick anymore. He's losing his legs, and he just falls over now, and he doesn't get free kicks. And so what's the point?
It feels like he's still dining out from that first 15 games of 3 years ago, where it's like, where he scored like 10 goals in 15 games, and everyone's like, who knew that Mikel Antonio was the best striker in the world? And as soon as he realized he was doing all right, he stopped scoring goals.
Yeah,
it was the weirdest thing, and it feels like he's still dining out on that a little bit.
Like, he had a really good end to the season last year, maybe not in terms of output, but like just overall performances. He was great. Like, he was good against you guys when we won at the stadium last year. In that draw against Arsenal, he was really good. The actual, I think the semi-final games and the quarter-final games against Ghent and Alkmaar in the Europa Conference League, he was great in all of those. But I'm looking at him now, and I'm just seeing a guy who I don't think particularly is asked about still being here.
Yeah.
And I just don't think he's the answer anymore. And when the guy behind him is Danny Ings, who cannot play as a lone striker, what are we going to do? Just wait for Jared Bowen to pop one in the top corner every now and then? Like,
I mean,
so
probably.
Yeah, probably the tactic. So, yeah, 2 points dropped as far as I'm concerned, and it's okay though. We've got Chelsea at home on Sunday, so
hooray!
Look forward to that, viewers. I might. It could get worse next week.
Well, that's a wonderful transition onto the next talking point. I think.
Absolutely.
I think the most entertaining game of the weekend, I don't know if you'd agree, Chelsea-Liverpool. It's amazing what two teams who don't have a DM play like.
We should abolish defensive midfielders. We should abolish defensive midfielders from now on. Like, they're not allowed anymore. Just everyone should play 3-10s.
Yeah.
And just go at it. It'd be great.
Just go, hammer and tongue. I thought it was great. Chelsea seem to have brought in a load of players that I've never heard of, who are fantastic. Liverpool looks really good. Honestly, like I thought Dom Szoboszlai was going to be a good signing for him. If he could play like that every game, he's going to be up there for signing of the season. He was outstanding. He was everywhere, and he's far too handsome to be a footballer.
Yeah, he's got a fantastic haircut. Like, I'm trying to go for a similar haircut. I can't do it.
But yeah, Liverpool look good. I mean, they looked a bit shaky in defence at times. I think the big thing that allowed Chelsea to grow into the game, and I will say now, I think that Chelsea had the better of the game. I think Chelsea can feel a bit, not aggrieved, but unfortunate to not win that game. Especially when they settled into the rhythm a little bit more, pushed those midfielders up and got that press on. I thought they looked really good. And I thought Enzo looked incredible. That's the best game I've seen him play in a Chelsea shirt. And I've watched quite a lot of Chelsea in the past kind of 12, 18 months, just out of like, freak show curiosity. Like,
they're like a weird experiment. Like a football experiment.
What is going on? This is like a real life Football Manager experiment.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've watched quite a lot of him, and whilst he looked okay at times and good at times last year, that was the first time I've seen him and go, that's a proper midfielder. He was great all over the pitch, and just he just made it look really easy, made difficult stuff look really easy. And I think with Caicedo coming in, potentially Lavia as well, rip Liverpool. Like having that slightly more mobile ball winner next to him will just open things up, and maybe even open up the opportunity to have a back four. Because I think the reason I went with that back three is just because of that midfield instability. And obviously, Thiago Silva, as great as he is about 300 years old now. So he'll have to have a week off now and again.
I'll say that challenge on Darwin Núñez, though, was fantastic. Like, Núñez picks the ball up, charges him, and Thiago Silva just goes, nope.
Yep. Absolutely not. He's just so good. Like, it's the old maxim of, the first yard's in your head. Yeah. He's just where he needs to be every time. It's the same with Casemiro last year. Yeah. Like the first yards in your head, when you get the opportunity to be where the ball's going to be, he's great. It's when someone's trying to run past you and you just don't have the legs anymore. Yeah. But yeah, I thought Chelsea were great. I'm concerned about their fullback situation because Reece James has gone off with an injury already about 50 minutes into the game, and he was brilliant, by the way.
Good.
He looked back to his best, and his best is very, very good.
Mate, if he stays fit, he's the best right back in the world for me. Like in terms of like what the modern day wing back or fullback is, I think he's the most complete. Like maybe hasn't got hasn't got the sort of passing range that Trent has got, but it's not far off.
Nobody does really, do they?
No one does. But he's not far off. He's a fantastic defender. He's great going forward. He could play centre midfield if you wanted him to. But I think the big bonus for Chelsea on that is, though, they've actually got a right back that they can sub on. Like, Gusto came on, didn't look out of place. Like, didn't have loads to do from a defensive standpoint anyway, admittedly. But I don't think... It's not like from last year where they'll bring an Azpilicueta on and sticking him at right back and going, good luck, Caesar. Have fun.
Yeah. Remember when you could run? Yeah, try and do that.
Yeah, just try it. See how it goes. And I want to give actually a bit of a shout out as well to Conor Gallagher. I thought struggled in the first half, but I think once Chelsea figured out Enzo and where they should both stand on the pitch out of possession and stuff, because I found the first half, I think Gallagher, whilst he wasn't playing well, he was isolated quite a lot and didn't have a lot of help around him. But once they tweaked in the second half,
wasn't he, rather than like being in his natural position. Yeah,
I thought he was great. Second half, especially, I thought he was excellent. And yeah, Chelsea, I'm worried for next week. I think Chelsea are. I've got them finishing fifth, but I do think it'll be close. And I thought that before putting them there. I was like, this isn't a guarantee. Like, it's between them, Liverpool, Villa, Newcastle. Like, that full spot is up for grabs. And there's a few teams who could get it. And yeah, Chelsea are a problem. One thing I did notice yesterday, like, Jackson looks decent. He works hard. He's quick. I'm not gonna say he's a crap finisher based off one game against Liverpool in his Premier League debut. Like, I'm sure he'll score goals. But I was watching Chelsea play yesterday, thinking probably Lukaku would have been really good in this team.
Yeah.
I was watching whip crosses into the box, and
I was actually gonna give Nicholas Jackson a bit of props. Like, I watched very little of him, and whenever I'd seen him, it had always been more like clips. And I don't know whether it was just like the kit or like being stood next to certain players. He looks massive. He looks bigger than I remember. I don't know whether he bulked up over the summer or something. But he's like another in this, like, I don't want to say new school, like, but like this, the classic number 9's coming back, right? Your big, quick 6'2" bloke who can bully people. They're coming back. And this time in pog form. But, but I thought he looked really good for a player that a lot of people, I think, had been thinking he might be a backup to another option. It looks like they're going to stick with him, and to be honest, I'm quite excited to see how he does, because he's another guy who's far bigger than he should be and way quicker than he should be allowed to be. Like,
they made the right decision.
Runs him behind a lot.
They made the right decision not giving him the number 9 shirt, because I think that would have ruined him. Like,
the number 9 Chelsea shirt is cursed.
Yeah, so just give him any number apart from number 9, and I'm sure it'll flourish. He looks really, really good.
Yeah, he's got a bit of Darwin Núñez vibes about him, like from Liverpool last year, where it's like little kind of. I described Darwin Nunez last year as like a jar full of bees as a player because he's just dangerous, but you never know what he's going to do because he doesn't know what he's going to do.
Yeah,
he's just kind of like he's just chaos, and he's got that similar kind of vibe about him. He's just like a bit all over the place, but he's going to get chances. He's going to score goals, and it's going to be interesting. It's actually I'm not a Chelsea fan by any means. I know you're not,
No.
but I think they're going to be quite a fun team to watch this year, especially if you have that Enzo playing a bit higher at the pitch with Conor Gallagher as an option in there as well. Got these young, exciting, kind of dynamic midfielders coming in. Like I say, as long as they can keep their key players fit, by that I mean their first choice wing backs, and like their prime creators like Enzo. If they can keep them fit, I think they might have a decent season, and yeah, maybe be pushing for that fourth, maybe even third spot if United don't get their shit together.
Yeah, man, and you think they've got Nkunku to come back from injury as well, which is a scary prospect because he's another one just ridiculously good. Really excited to see what he can do in the league.
Yeah,
and I think as well they played a back five yesterday, but they've got the players to play. If they wanted to go for a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 or something like that, do you know what I mean? They can sort of switch to that in theory pretty seamlessly.
Yeah,
because I know Poch has played that sort of system at Spurs before with midfield three. But I also know he used a back five at PSG. But the fact he's got all these players who are quite versatile that he can sort of tweak the systems pretty much game to game if he needs to. I think it's a big plus for Chelsea. Like,
got a lot of players to choose from.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that as well. They've been so rigid for the past couple of years. It feels like, well, apart from last season where it wasn't even rigid. It was just a mess.
Well, yeah, Lampard ball.
Lampard, yeah, prime Lampard ball.
Go out there and have fun. This isn't fun, boys. What did I say?
Do what I did when I played for him. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're going to be they're one to watch this year, Chelsea, and they're always going to be because we've put new manager, loads of new players. It's just such an unknown quantity, but they're going to be fun to watch this year for sure. And I mean, so are Liverpool, but I feel like Liverpool is going to be, for Liverpool fans, probably not as fun, especially if they don't end up with a 6. And
they will bring someone in, I'm sure, but I don't know, are the cracks showing around Liverpool a little bit? Like, it seems like they're missing out on players coming in. Like, you saw Salah going off having a strop. Like, whilst they were great at periods yesterday, and like they have that really high energy midfield again, which is is the best Liverpool that we've seen in years. There was still just kind of like this defensive fragility. There's too many gaps. Like, there are just some cracks there. When Chelsea started getting into it, it just didn't look like they knew how to respond. No. But maybe having that kind of proper number 6 in there, they are missing that player. I keep saying they should go for Palhinha from Fulham. Like, I know he doesn't kind of fit the the young, exciting player mold anymore, but he was arguably the best defensive midfielder in the league last year.
He was fantastic.
Like in a Fulham team that isn't full of great players, he was outstanding. And I think if you have a player, him or a player like him, as that rock in front of that defense, allowing Trent to kind of move up into midfield a little bit of protection to the defense. I mean, he's a big bloke. He's a threat from set pieces as well. That would be great, and it would allow a player like Bajcetic or something to kind of get minutes behind him and come through and get game time. Whereas, going for another really young kind of, I don't want to say unproven, because I think Lavia and Caicedo had really good seasons last year, but they're still young. They're going to have an erratic season. They're not going to be the most reliable. And a lot of that Liverpool team are like, they're still in their prime years. Like, you got Van Dijk and Salah, who are in their 30s now. Like, they want to win some more. It's kind of like the spot that United are in, but at a further level. Like, they've got players who want to be winning now, who need to be winning now, because they ain't got 5 years.
No.
So, like, you need that finished article a little bit. And I think he'd just wrap everything up really nicely in a bow for him.
It's interesting you said about the cracks starting to appear. I don't know if you caught the pre-match coverage for the game tonight, but Carragher was talking about.
I didn't. I was traveling home, unfortunately.
So Carragher was talking about the whole. He called it a mess. I think there's no other way to describe it really. This sort of approach of not being like £5 million under Southampton's valuation of Lavia, then going in for the 110 mil bid of Caicedo. Then going in and bidding 60 million for Lavia, which is now 10 million over what Southampton's valuation was, and now he's likely to go to Chelsea as well. And I think Carragher kind of hit the nail on the head, really. Like, since Michael Edwards left Liverpool, I don't think their recruitment has been as much of a like it's not been as much of a bullseye. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like when Edwards was there,
where so many of their signings were nail on the head every time, and I think that's.
You can hear the F1 out my window, by the way. I can only apologise.
Yeah, who's in P1?
Yeah.
What strategy they're running? What was I saying? Yeah, they had so many kind of like nailed on signings for quite a long period of time, and it's almost impossible to maintain, because the hit rate on transfers is about 50-50. Like,
of course,
there's videos that go into it in much better detail on TIFO and stuff like that. I'm not going to bore you with that right now, but like it's like a 50% hit rate, and for so long there was like, yeah, maybe one or two signings that didn't quite work out, like Naby Keita or something. Like, it's a 50 million midfielder that's
of course.
But United have been doing that for years. Like we've been signing players and letting them leave for nothing for ages. So.
But I think Carragher's point more was not necessarily the hit rate of signings, but I think just in terms of the organisation and the infrastructure and the sort of plan that goes into it. Edwards left, new guy came in, and then went after a season, I think. Then another guy came in, I think also went. Now they've got this new dude in from Germany, whose name I can't remember, but I think he's only here for the summer. This is what Carragher was saying. If I'm wrong, blame Carragher, not me. Like, there doesn't really seem to be much of a plan. Like, I don't think they necessarily knew that Henderson and Fabinho were going to go this season. But they were both getting, like, Henderson especially was getting on a little bit. Fabinho was ropey last year, like, wasn't very good. It didn't really feel like, I mean, again, Liverpool knew they needed midfielders going into this season. And I'm struggling to sort of see that how they've ended up in a situation where, like, the two names they've come up with are Lavia and Caicedo, and they've cocked it up so badly, they're going to end up with neither of them. Like, one of them would have been fine. Like, and if they were going to chuck in 110 million for Caicedo, where was it at the start of the window? Like, unless Caicedo and his owners have just messed them around and gave him false indication that he wanted to join. But, like, where was that? Why chase Lavia the entire summer and then not match the valuation at all when it's like a £5 million difference?
Yeah.
Like, if you think he's the guy and you want to be challenging for the league this year and challenging for trophies, pay the extra. I know it's easy said and done. Pay the extra $5 million and go get him.
It's for Liverpool. It's $5 million's not a lot, is it? And,
no.
And there was, like you're saying, like they knew they needed to strengthen the midfield, and the way I looked at it, like obviously the McAllister and Szoboszlai signings are really good. Like you can't sniff at those. You got a World Cup and one of the best attacking central midfielders in Europe. Like I say, he was phenomenal yesterday. But you still knew that you had aging and out of form players. You got Thiago who can't stay fit, and you're already losing James Milner and Naby Keita on a free, as well as Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. So your midfield options are already you're already behind where you were before. So I don't know why they didn't go out and get that player that they knew they needed. And like you say, just fighting around over $5 million, it's like
it doesn't even feel like they've identified, like, apart from Lavia. I don't like. Was Caicedo even a part of the plan, or was it just, oh, Chelsea are going for our guy, so we're going to go for their guy? Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like there's a real plan of intent there from Liverpool this summer.
Feels more Spurs than Liverpool.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And as far as, like, I mean, someone asked the question on the Twitter thread earlier, like, who do Liverpool go for now? I mean, I'm not a scout with a wealth of football knowledge. I don't know. Like, the only one that can maybe come to mind is like Sangaré from PSV.
Yeah,
I don't know whether he's a natural six or not, or even fits the Liverpool team. I'm not too sure. But like I mean, there's those types of midfielders are such a high commodity now. You're seeing the prices they're all going for. Declan Rice 105 million. Caicedo 110. Like Paulini was being quoted at like 80 million by Fulham. Like, those positions are really important, and that's why teams are desperate to keep onto them.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Liverpool do if they don't get a six, and I'm sure they will.
There are options out there, definitely. Like you say, Sangare's like been a player that a lot of kind of internet scouts have been screaming about for years.
Of course.
And like from what I've seen of him, which is like admittedly little. It's mostly like clip stats and like the odd European game that I'm able to catch. He does look great, and he looks like one of those players that could be a great kind of, a six, but you don't know if he's going to do it in the Prem. You've got Paulini there, who's going to cost about what Lavia was going to cost, maybe like 10 million more for a Prem-proven player who's settled in. He'd be great. There's talks that Tchouameni, wants out of Real Madrid, or Real Madrid are happy to let him go.
That got shut down today. I'm pretty sure. I think.
Was that shut down today?
I think Romano. This is apparently news. Liverpool want Tchouameni. Real Madrid don't want to sell him. Tchouaméni doesn't want to leave.
Oh,
And I was like, that's a great update, Fab.
yeah. I'm pretty sure he just like retweeted something from last year, right?
yeah, not like Romano, is it?
But I mean, they've got to pick someone up, because if they don't, like they
are in trouble.
Not in when we say trouble. I don't mean like trouble of going down. I feel like there's going to be far too many games where they just can't keep a hold of it, and a team will find those gaps, like Chelsea did. And like I'd say Chelsea bossed the game for at least half of it. Like it was. Chelsea were in control of the game more than Liverpool were, and there was a period where it was pretty 50-50. Is that what I'd say?
Yeah. I think, but by in trouble, I just mean I think they'll have a similar season to last year. Just massively inconsistent, picked apart quite easily by teams who can figure out. I thought McAllister was really good yesterday, but he's just not a 6. Yeah, and it's just a bit of a waste of him being there, I think, especially in that type of game. Maybe against a Luton, you can play him there because you'll have 80% possession of the ball.
And you can play him there if you've got a double pivot. Like he's not a destroyer. He's not a ball winner. He's a great passer of the ball, but it's not his role, is it really? It's going to be an interesting one. I mean, it's not a hot take on our replies, but I did see a few hot takes on Twitter of people saying they reckon Klopp walks if he doesn't get a midfielder in. Like walks before December.
I can't see it. Like
even I'm not willing to put that one out into the ether.
Yeah, they've had many windows, but they've not quite got what they've wanted to get, and he's stuck with it. So I'm sure that won't happen.
Well, speaking of transfers, we've had a ton of transfer news. Obviously, we kind of touched on the Caicedo stuff and the Lavia stuff, but one of the big ones, obviously, the guy that was chasing down the Alan Shearer's goal scoring record in the Premier League, Spurs' all-time top goal scorer, one of the best number 9s, if not the best number 9 right now, like proper centre forward in world football, has left the Premier League and gone to Bayern. So for you, where does this leave Kane in terms of like, does he go down as a Premier League great? Does he go down? He obviously goes down as a Spurs great, and he's obviously a wonderful England player. But what is his legacy? What's he left? Like, he scored a load of goals.
Yeah,
that's it.
I think he's got to go down as one of the best. I don't think you necessarily have to win stuff to be remembered in a certain way necessarily. I don't think there's any argument that Kane has been, trophy or no trophy, Kane's been one of the greatest strikers in the Premier League era for me. Like, to get even that close and seemingly out of nowhere, like this wasn't like you heard Spurs fans talking about this young striker we've got coming from the academy and like one day he's going to be this. This was the guy who's just being loaned out to the Championship every year and not really doing an awful lot.
It was just unbelievable how quickly he kind of went, oh, I'm a world-class striker now.
Yeah, just got given his chance by Tim Sherwood of all people. So there you go, Tim. There's your 5 minutes. Yeah. Gilet wearing wanker. I'm not a fan, but he got given his chance, and he has gone on to be like England captain again, one of the greatest goal scorers the Premier League's ever seen. And has he scored more goals than Shearer? No, but it might still happen in the future. And have Spurs won anything? No, I've never put that down to Kane though. That is a Spurs problem. And they have not won stuff in spite of Harry Kane being as good as he is.
Although that being said, he has immediately cost Bayern Munich a trophy. So maybe it's the Harry Kane curse and not the Spurs curse.
I'll tell you what though, if Spurs win a trophy this year, that would be like just perfect. Like I don't want Spurs to win a trophy. I haven't really got any ill feeling towards Harry Kane, but it just would be hilarious. Like even I couldn't argue that. Like, but no, like his legacy for me is like I say, he's just one of the best strikers ever played in the Premier League. Like I know obviously Gerrard won stuff, but like people always use the fact that Gerrard never won a Premier League title against him. Doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned.
Daily.
Yeah, there you go. Like it doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned. Still one of the best ever midfielders to ever play in the league. Like I think I think it was absolutely the right move he had to make. The fact there was even talk of him maybe even staying was I get it. He would have had more options and stuff, but like to get the opportunity to go and lead the line for Bayern Munich, he had or play for Spurs for a year. No, you go play for Bayern Munich, obviously.
Yeah, and like you say, he is one of the best goal scorers in Premier League history, and he will always have his name kind of etched there in terms of the goal totals. It's just, I think for me, whenever I think of the best players in the league, And maybe he's just going to be an outlier because he played at Spurs for so long. But whenever I think of the best players in the league or in Premier League history, there's always some trophies behind it. There's always something that they've won. There's never like, you go through your top 20 players in Premier League history, and you've probably always got someone in there who's won a League Cup, an FA Cup, a league, or done some or a Champions League or something like that. So I'm not too sure.
I think you have to. I think it's one of them where you have to remember though where Spurs were when Kane sort of broke into that team, like pre-Poch. Then Poch comes in, and where Poch took Spurs from where they were to where they have been under Kane. Like, I'm not saying it's all down to Kane that Spurs got to this point, but like, Kane was a big reason of why Spurs were able to challenge for league titles and get to Champions League finals. And like before that, Spurs were just like a top 8 team that every now and then would finish 4th.
Yeah,
and then now, and partly because of him, people consider Spurs to be one of the big 6 in the Premier League, which is bollocks. But like, but it is like realistically when you think about it. Like I know Spurs historically, had success and are looked at as a big club, but like Kane is such a big part of that. Would I guess my question: would Spurs have got as close as they did if Harry Kane wasn't there? I'm not convinced they would have done.
No, I think. He might be one of those players who always goes down as a. If he'd have gone to another club, he could have done more. Yeah, like he could have taken that. People still argue it now with Steven Gerrard, right? Like if he'd have gone to that Chelsea team, look at he could have won even more. And props to him for wanting to do it with his club, and he came pretty close. And I guess there's the same kind of there's the same thing with Harry Kane. Like obviously got to a Champions League final, finished second to Leicester side. They should have won the league that year.
Yeah, they should have done.
And obviously, like that's the club he came up through. Like you say, he got the chance there when he wasn't even a highly talked of footballer. I don't think he made his first team debut till he's like 2021.
Yeah,
and he's managed to he
played a couple of games in the Europa League, and then off the back of that, got a start in the Premier League and just carried on scoring goals.
Like, hey, hi, I'm the best goal scorer you've ever seen. There's a kind of obviously it's a different kind of play, but there's kind of shades of Marcus Rashford about it because. Yeah, speaking as a United fan, like when he came through, there was a lot of players being touted as like the next big thing, and Rashford was always thought of as like a good player, but never like he's going to be a great player. There was not Will Keane, his brother, Michael Keane. Michael Keane.
Will Keane, it was Will Keane, yeah.
Yeah. So Will Keane was coming through. He was always seen as high. There was a couple of other players there who would have got the chance because he got the chance through injuries in a Europa League game. Kind of similar to Harry Kane. Like there was loads of injuries. I think Ibrahimovic was injured, and they just kind of like pulled him in, and he just kind of took off running. He scored a couple of goals. Okay, well you get another game then. Scored a couple against Liverpool or Arsenal or something. And it's like, okay, I guess you're staying in the team. and he's slowly progressed. Yeah, he's had the off season here or there, but like I think more often than not he improves year on year, and. Like I say, to a lesser extent, like he's done something similar to Harry Kane. Obviously, Harry Kane scored ungodly amount of goals, and like, I don't think anyone's going to argue that in terms of where they stand on the world class kind of barometer, Harry Kane's right at the top. Yeah. And we'll see what happens to Marcus Rashford. He needs another season like last year, or to step on for me. But I still think he's a wonderful player with a similar thing. But I'm not going to railroad this into some Rashford loving.
We do. No, I'm a big fan of Rashford, so I'm happy to hear it. But no, and now Bayern have not won the Pokal for the first time in God knows how long. So good. Enjoy Germany, Harry. It's going to be. Honestly, I can't wait to see Dortmund win the league this year.
If this is the year where Dortmund or Leipzig win it, and I mean, even if Spurs just get to a final, like if they get close to a final, they'll be like. If Harry Kane was here, we'd have won this. Or Bayern are crying in third.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll just to clip that up for when that happens.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just before we get to the sort of ending point of the episode, I wanted to run a question by you because I actually had this conversation. I was watching Clay's stream over the weekend, and we had a little back and forth about it. This whole Caicedo thing. He's gone to, as of recording today, 14th August, he's gone today, £115 million, and Brighton picked him up for like what, 4 million from Independiente. Yeah, it's outrageous. Are we getting to the point now where like the big clubs, like your Chelsea's, your super clubs, the ones who've got just money to burn for fun, like your Man City's, your Chelsea's at the moment, your PSG's, do they even need to bother with scouts anymore? Or is it just a case of like their method of scouting is we'll let the smaller teams take the punts on these young players or these like sort of gems from out of nowhere, and if they end up being good in a year, we've got the money still, we'll just spend 100 million on them. Like are we ever going to see? Because I think the point I made to Clates was like, because we were talking about the Liverpool Caicedo thing. Clates, Liverpool fan, I was like, well, or Liverpool could just go out and find the next side. You know, what I mean, you go and find that sort of player for that sort of price, but rather than having to go out and spend 100 million on him after a couple of seasons. And I think Clay's point was, well, in the eyes of the club of that size, it's actually more of a risk to spend 4 million quid on an unknown player than it is to go and get someone who's more of a guarantee. Whereas I'm like, well, surely it's more of a risk to spend 100 million on him after a couple of years in the Premier League. I'll be interested. Obviously, you're a supporter of Man United, one of the biggest clubs in the country. I'd be interested to hear your take on it, especially Rasmus Højlund's just come in, 70 million this summer. Like, when.
I think the thing with it is this isn't a new phenomenon. This isn't like, oh, this has only just started happening recently. It's just the figures are higher. Like, it's always been a case of like Man United were the kings of it in the 90s and the 2000s of like, all right, who are the three players in the league that are better than anyone else and should be a better club? All right, we'll have them. We'll have Berbatov. We'll have Carrick. We'll have, like, and we'd do that. I was just saying, like, Rio Ferdinand and like bringing these kind of players through. Wayne Rooney, perfect example. Like, he's far too good to be there. We'll have him. As 40 million or 50 million or whatever the record was at the time. And other teams have done it as well. Like Liverpool used to do it, like Arsenal used to do it. There's been loads of big teams have kind of cherry-picked the best players from smaller clubs. And I don't think it's necessarily like they don't want to give young players a chance or bring young players through. I think it's just that, like Clay said, like it's almost more of a risk to go, we're going to sign this guy for 4 million quid and maybe we'll see if he's any good. And one of the big things that Brighton have done really well, and it's not just Brighton that have done it, obviously, but I'll use them as a case in point. They'll take that 3-4 million quid outlay and then loan them out for 2 or 3 years to go and get some game time somewhere else. And it's when they come back is when they start to get good. So it's not just like they've signed a 3-4 million quid player and it's paid off. Like even the Leicester stuff, like with Kante and Mahrez, they signed them in the Championship where like there's a little bit less pressure to do it. You don't need to come in and hit the ground running. So there isn't that pressure to perform immediately. Whereas when you've brought a player in, given him the loan out, brought him back after a couple of years, like Alexis McAllister was the same. They signed him, loaned him out. And I bet there's untold amounts of players that they've done that with that haven't worked out.
Of course.
It's just there's 4 or 5 players that have. And Brighton have been the biggest kind of beneficiary of it recently. So I kind of look at it, though, like a player come through and then do it in a really good Brighton side where you can go, all right, yeah, we're going to spend a load of money on him, but he's got it. Whereas you could try and scattergun 10 players for that and have a 0% hit rate because you don't have the development or the pathway to get to the first team.
I think it's interesting. You mentioned like Arsenal, like you said, like obviously United used to do it, and obviously City do it now, and like Arsenal, you say Arsenal used to do it. But I guess I look at Arsenal, like even back in the Wenger days, they went and found Patrick Vieira. Like no one had heard of it. Obviously, different times, right? Not people, English fans didn't really know much about anything of like players overseas unless they were playing in like Italy or Spain at the time. But they went and found Patrick Vieira, like for like, I know again the fees are obviously not comparable nowadays, but not as relative maybe.
Arsenal found Patrick Vieira, definitely, because
and like even recently, right? Gabriel Martinelli was sort of plucked out of the Brazilian second division or third division, something like that, and now he's like one of the best wingers in the league. And it's like, I know the hit rate's not always there, but I do wonder if like, and I guess like you could maybe argue City had done it with Alvarez, but I think everyone knew of Alvarez anyway, just mainly because of Football Manager. But Alvarez was already a name coming through. But like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm not comfortable with just seeing clubs just go, oh, I'm just going to chuck 100 million there, 100 million there sort of thing. Like, there's a little bit more of a romanticism when a club picks a player out from like obscurity and they turn into like, a world beater. It just doesn't really seem to happen with the bigger clubs anymore. Is it maybe, like you said, maybe it was just Arsenal or the outlier, and that's what sort of clouded my thoughts on it.
I think as well, it's very dependent on how quickly you need them to be the guy.
Yeah,
like if Liverpool, for example, they've got Bajcetic as a young DM, and that's it. Like they need someone to come in and be the guy. So you need someone that, even though they might be really young, is proven. They might have only had 1-2 good years, but they're more proven that it's like who can handle the pressure of Premier League, or elite football. Whereas again, if you go out and buy a 18, 19-year-old kid for 4 million quid and go, there you go be our defensive midfielder in front of this defense that doesn't defend. Like, and it's going to be your fault when we concede goals.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like you can kind of weigh it up in a couple of different ways. And that being said, like for all the big money that Chelsea have spent on like established players and good, they have picked up a few guys who are pretty cheap. Like there was a couple of, like a midfielder that came on or a left back that came on at the weekend who was like, "Who's this guy? I've never heard of him." And I was like,
I know what you mean,
like £8 million from France. And he's like, and he's now in the Chelsea first team. All right, okay, well maybe there is that kind of thing, but they're going to be fed in from underneath rather than fed to the dogs straight away. And to be fair, United have done it. United have done it with a couple of players. There's Pellistri who's now kind of getting game time. He came off the bench and looked pretty lively. We had Ahmad. I mean, we spent a decent whack of cash on him, but he's been out on loan, proving himself. You got young players coming through that have been signed for that. It's just they don't want to be thrown straight in at the deep end. Like Dallo was that. We signed him as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and he's been out to Italy and Portugal on loan, and he's like 23 now, and he's starting to blood himself into the first team. I don't think he's the same level as a Casado or anything like that, but there are teams that try and do it. And it's like I say, I think it's just the pressure that's on it. I think it's easier to do it at a Brighton than it is a Liverpool or a Man United.
Yeah, I see that. And I guess the more money in football now, the less risk you can take, really. Just because of the stakes are so much higher, right? Especially for the traditional big six or big seven, whoever.
Yeah, and I think as well, like if one of those big teams are going to give a kid a chance in the first team, I think you're always better weighted trying to give it to someone who's come through the academy rather than someone you've signed at 18, 19 years.
Yeah.
Like, because you'll get a bit of leeway from the fans. Like they've come through the system. They understand it a little bit more rather than signing an 18-year-old, chucking him in the first team. Even if you bring him in like as a foreign youngster and bring them in, like Garnacho is a really good example of that. I picked him up for a few $100,000 as a 15-year-old or something. He's come through the academy, but because he's from the academy, like the fans will give him a bit of extra leeway and like allow the odd bad game. It's like, oh well, he's just a kid, he's giving it a go. Whereas if you sign someone like that, we'll be going, why have we signed this 18-year-old kid when there's 18-year-old kids in the youth academy?
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. It's a fair point. You can consider my opinion swayed.
Yeah.
You win this round, Clates.
Damn you.
He's done it again. I just turned to lead judges there for my FTV. He's done it again.
You're not that bad.
No, well, speaking of horrendous football opinions, no AFTV. Well, yes, AFTV, but they're not the example I'm going to use for this week. We are going to do a quick little segment to end on, which I'm going to call terrible football takes from pundits. The name needs a little bit of work, admittedly, which I'm sure we'll figure out.
Awful pundit take of the week.
Yes, awful pundit take of the week. That's much. See, you're good at this. Originally, my plan was to try and pick out a few and then sort of read some off to you and get your reaction. But I can only really find one from the past week because a lot of the football I've watched this week, a lot of people have actually been quite sensible. Shout out to Daniel Sturridge in particular, who I thought was really, really good on Sky this week. Oh, and also just quickly, Peter Drury. Oh, bloody love Peter Drury.
It's good to have him back in it.
Oh mate, honestly, I was watching Chelsea Liverpool thinking I'm enjoying Sky coverage again. Like it's been so long.
when that was announced, when they announced that Drury was coming back, I was so delighted, and like half of my Discord were going nuts for it because we all love Drury.
Yeah.
And one guy was like, "Oh, I'm not a really big fan of Peter Drury," and I was hovering over the ban button.
Yeah.
The Greek god in Rome will forever live rent free in my head.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much better than just his Martin go, oh, well, and it's a goal.
Yeah.
And, well, it's 2-1 in the 90th minute. And that's
Even sounding bitter about someone scoring a goal.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, enjoy your retirement, Martin, but on it 5 years too late. But in terms of awful pundit takes for the week, I mean, he might come up quite a lot throughout the season. I've got to give it to Michael Owen, who, I know, right? Like, who saw that coming? I'm going to read out his tweet, and I'm sure you've seen it, but for people who are listening who may not have seen the tweet, I'm just going to read it out as he tweeted it, right? This is obviously to do around Harry Kane and his transfer to Bayern Munich. Michael Owen tweeted on August 10th, I know Bayern Munich are a massive club, and I have huge respect for them, but if I were Harry Kane, I'd stay put. There's no great achievement in winning a trophy with them. Real Madrid, I'd understand, or one of the top 2 Premier League clubs for that matter. Becoming the all-time Premier League top goal scorer for Spurs is a bigger achievement than winning the league in a country dominated by one team. Now, before I get your reaction, every fucking pundit in the country was saying, yeah, Kane would be great. Kane should definitely go to Man City, like I've seen ago. Who play in a league where it's dominated by one team.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah. Or you go to Real Madrid, a country that is dominated by 2 teams. Like, it is becoming a little bit of football monopoly in some nations. Hopefully, it kind of sways a little bit in the Premier League. But there's no guarantee. Like, the only top teams who Harry Kane could realistically have gone to in the Premier League would have been Man United, maybe Chelsea. But I don't see Levy doing deals with either of them.
No.
But there's no guarantees that they win anything either. Like, he could have moved and, just ended up with, I don't know, like a league runners-up or maybe an FA Cup, maybe. Like, it's not like he's going to go there and win 3 Premier Leagues in the next 3 years. That being said, I do think Harry Kane at United would have made United given them a better chance at challenging for the title.
Absolutely.
I still think we're going to finish about 15 points behind City. We'll have just been closer.
It's just the disrespect. Like, I get it. The Bundesliga is not that competitive. Of course, I get that. But this isn't Dortmund we're talking about. This isn't like this is Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
They're one of the biggest clubs in Europe. Like one of the most decorated clubs of all time. And like, according to I do think there's a little bit of like bitterness from Owen here because like he got his move to Real Madrid and just stunk the place out, and then had to go calling back to Newcastle a year later. Like,
well, didn't he actually start off pretty well and then his legs fell off? Basically,
pretty, but yeah. My legs fell off. The Michael Owen story. Honestly, I love Michael Owen as a player, but as a pundit, honestly, absolute moron.
Rather watch paint dry.
Yeah.
But yeah, awful pundit takes of the week. That's the opening segment. We'll try and find some more. I'll have to listen to some more Gabby Ogbonlahor.
I'm going to listen to the Talk Sport this week. Oh, God.
I'll tell you what, if any of you guys have your terrible pundit takes of the week, get them onto the Twitter. Just at us on Twitter or on Instagram or wherever you social media. And we'll definitely put them into the rotation and give you a shout out as well. But I think that's going to be it from us this week. Kind of a little bit short today. Not quite the 80 minutes of football nonsense. It's, 70 minutes of football not nonsense. We're determined to not just be doing shit takes for the clicks.
No.
Yeah, anyway, we'll give it to episode 3 at least.
Yeah, not to say there won't be shit takes, but we can back them up.
But they might be terrible, but we believe it.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you really want, right? That's all you really want.
Yeah, just believable, honest, terrible opinions. So no Rory Jennings.
No, thank Christ.
Well, I think that'll be it from us for this week. As always, guys, cheers for tuning in. If you are watching on YouTube, please do leave a like, a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Give us a rating on whichever platform you're listening on as well, be it Spotify or any other podcast kind of dispensary. But thank you once again for tuning in. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, and we'll catch you next time. Take it easy, guys.
Bye.